When you first open SketchUp, a welcome window will open, and it has various links for different opportunities to explore the program and some of its different features. It has some licensing information, which you won't really need to worry about as a student, and as well as different templates. And we need to choose a template, and you can do the same thing with this button right up here in the top right. We're going to basically work with a simple template in feet and inches, but if you're working in a metric environment, you can always switch it to meters later on. There's different design styles as well: architectural, engineering, construction, 3D printing. All of those we'll cover later on, but for right now, we're just going to choose our default template. Go ahead and click on Start Using SketchUp. When your canvas opens up, you'll have a plane. That is your ground. You can think of this as just a big field of grass if you want. There'll be a red axis, a green axis which is perpendicular to the red axis, and a blue axis which is vertical, that are perpendicular to both. So it's like a X, Y, and Z axis, but in SketchUp it's referred to as red, green, and blue. There will be this figure in the middle, and that's just a person or a component that they put in to help you get a sense of scale so that you don't end up drawing way too big or way too small to begin with. We'll delete that person later on. Across the top we've got the simple tool set, and these are just icons that you can click on to execute various commands. We'll be going through most of those throughout our lessons. You can also get to the same tools by using these pull-down menus. And sometimes they're pretty handy, but for the most part I use the icons that are in the tool sets. Over on the right side is what are called trays, and they're called that because they have this window shade type behavior. You can open them or close them. These are the default ones that open up with the program, and the one that I'm going to want to make sure that you have open is the instructor tool. And what that does is it tells you what the name of the tool is, it tells you how to operate it, and then it has modifier keys. And these are keys that you can press to execute different behaviors. So for example, the move tool, if I want to move something, I can click on it, but I've also got all of these different modifier keys. So for example, if I want to copy this person, notice over on the right where it says that if I press the Control key once, I can now copy whatever I've selected and move it to a different place. Again, we'll go over all that later on, but I just want you to know that the instructor tray is one to keep an eye on, especially when you get stuck. Much of the same of the information that is in the instructor key is also down here in the what's called the status bar, and this changes every time you do something. So for example, if I want to draw a rectangle, as I move down, notice where it says select the first corner. So I'll draw my rectangle. Now it says select the opposite corner or enter a value. Where would I enter a value? Well, that's over in the other corner, and that's the last part that I want to mention, and this is the measurements box. Right now the dimensions are expressed in feet and inches, but if we're doing something that involves angles, it will give us those measurements in degrees rather than in feet and inches. So that's the basic environment of the screen. So let's go ahead and get started and start doing some drawing. Before we start drawing, I want to take and make some changes to the workspace. That is what I see on the screen. And while the default setup is just fine, you have the chance or the opportunity to modify it however you want. I'm going to show you how I like it. You can set it any way you want it. Let me show you how you go about doing that, and then you can decide for yourself. So if I come up under View and choose Toolbars, these are all kinds of different toolbars that when you click or check the boxes, different things come up. Some of them are repetitive. For example, in this toolbar there's the Move tool, and down here in this toolbar there's the Move tool. So I don't like to have too many open, but you could certainly open up a whole bunch. all that's there by default is just what's called the Getting Started toolbar. And that's a good one, but I like the large tool set better. So I'll open that one up, and it opens up over here on the left side of the screen, and it has basically all of the Getting Started functions as well as some others that are commonly used. And so I'm going to bring that up, and I'm going to turn off the Getting Started toolbar. And then there's one other that I like quite a bit, and it's called Views. And you can just take and move that over here like I do. And what that allows you to do is to take and go to an isometric, or kind of like a fake 3D view, a top view. Well, I guess I have to close this first. There we go. Now we'll go to top view, and there's the woman. You can see that she's just 2D. Front view, side view. All it's really changing is the axes, because the person that's in there is programmed to always be facing the camera. And then you can think of the camera as your eyeballs. So we'll go back to the isometric layout, and so now this is the workspace that I like. I like the instructor window over here and these different trays, although you can change any of those by coming in to the default trays and checking them. It's probably more than you need, but since they collapse or window shade, or you can move them up just like a window shade, it's not really a big deal. So we'll just leave those that way for now, especially since you're just beginning. So before we start drawing, there's one more thing I want to show you, and that's how you can keep these toolbars in place so that each time you open up SketchUp, you don't have to go through and redo the work that I just did. So we'll go to Window, and we'll go to Preferences, and there's a whole bunch of preferences here, and for the most part we're just going to leave them in a default setting so that you don't have to diddle around with too much before we get started. But just go ahead and click the Reset Workspace button once, and then click OK to close the dialog box. And next time you open up SketchUp, it'll look just like you left it in terms of the trays over on the right and the various toolbars across the top and down the left side. Now, as I go through and make our first project, I'm going to try to use as many of the different tools as possible. And the tools are right here, and the icons for those tools are pretty much here in our large tool set. But there's one more thing that I want you to have, and that's this right here, which is a SketchUp Pro, although all the same commands pretty much work up for SketchUp, make no real difference. The quick reference card. It gives you, for example, eraser. You can just press the erase key rather than clicking on the eraser icon. Likewise, if you want to rotate, press Q rather than rotate over here. It really becomes handy, and I like to use the keyboard shortcuts wherever I can. But this is basically all of the different commands that you can execute to make your geometry in SketchUp. It's not a condensed list. I mean, this is the whole 9 yards, as they say. Over on the right, for each of these, if there is a second option, for example, for the eraser, if you hold or tap the Control key, you get these different functions. Hold down the Shift, it'll hide. Control Shift, unsoften, unsmooth. The big one is the Move tool. There are many different secondary functions of the Move tool after the M key that you can execute. So I suggest that you have this either on your other monitor or under a tab that you can open up, or even print it out if you want. It won't be long before you'll be able to memorize these just from using them to create your model. So sometimes you'll see me clicking on an icon over here in the toolbar. Sometimes I'll just go ahead and press a particular key. By the way, you don't have to have it memorized. If you just know what's available, for example, if I select the lady that's standing here in the middle and then execute the Move tool by either clicking on the icon or pressing the M key on my keyboard, down below here you'll see that I can pick 2 points to move. If I press the control key, that'll do a toggle copy. An alt key, it'll do a toggle auto fold, and shift key gives me a lock inference, which we'll all discuss later. But for example, if I just want to go ahead and press the control key, that gives me a toggle copy, and you'll notice that there's a little plus by the icon there, or rather the cursor. And so I'll just go ahead and pick a point, and then when I drag, it gives me another point. Okay, and you'll notice the farther I drag off, the smaller the character becomes. It's not actually getting smaller, but is rather because we have perspective turned on. So what I'm going to do is another thing that I prefer to do, doesn't really matter a whole bunch, but I think it translates better for doing demonstrations for you folks, is if I go to parallel projection rather than perspective. So now if I go ahead and do the move, press the control key, click, doesn't matter where I move the object to, it stays on the screen its original size. Okay, so with those places and with that information in mind, let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to take and make the base of our doghouse out of 2x4s. Matter of fact, that's the lumber that we're going to be using for most of the project, and they're actually not 2 inches by 4 inches in cross section, but rather 1.5 by 3.5 inches. So let's just go ahead and make one across the bottom here, and I'm going to start on the origin, and I'm using the rectangle tool, and I'm going to come across here, and now looking down in the measurements box, I can see that if it's going to be 1 foot 1 3/8 inches wide, and I don't want that. I just want it to be 1.5 inches wide. So I'll type in 1.5 and then comma, and the other dimension I want is 4 feet. And I can either type in 4 and the foot symbol, or I can type in 48 inches, because remember when we started with our template, we were working in feet and inches. So SketchUp is just going to assume it's in inches unless you tell it different. So if I go ahead and just hit the enter key now, there is the base of my 2x4. And now I'm going to take and use a new tool called the push-pull tool, which you can execute either with this icon or by pressing the P key. Have that chart handy because it does save time, and I'll be using both. So how far do I want to come up? I want to come up just 3.5 inches and hit enter. So I've now got a 4 foot 2x4 laying up on its edge. Well, let's just go ahead, and I could draw several of these. Matter of fact, I'm just going to go ahead and draw the next one. Actually, I'm not. Actually, what I'm going to do at this point is just show you a different way. I'm trying to show you as many different ways as possible. So I'm going to orbit around here, and I am going to draw a box around the 2x4, and it went ahead and it selected it. And now I'm going to use a regular Windows command. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it. And you can use the Control-C, Control-V. And when it chooses to paste it, see how it's attached to my cursor? So I'm just going to put it down just here for now, just approximately there. I'm now going to take and make a 3 foot 2x4. And again, lots and lots of ways you can do this. Since I'm going to want it to be attached right here, I'm going to come up across. Remember, it's 1.5 by 3.5. So I'm going to type in 3.5 comma 1.5, like so. Then I'm going to use the push-pull tool again to pull this out, and we'll say 36 inches. And now I'm going to move this 2x4 into place. And to do that, I'm going to use the Move tool. Now let's talk about the Move tool just for a moment. When I click on it, over here in the instructor, it tells you how to do it. Moving's not hard. You just go ahead and select what you want to move. Go ahead and drag it to where you want, just like you might expect. But you've got all these different modifier keys, and we're going to be using those as we continue to build our model, because this is an easy and powerful way to create accurate geometry quickly. And when I say geometry, I'm talking about the parts, the things that we model on the computer. So let's just go ahead and select this 2x4 so that I can move it. I have to tell SketchUp what I want to move before I do that. And I can again, orbit around. For example, let's just go to the top view, okay? There's my 2x4. I can draw a box around it. Now it's selected. I'll press the M key to start the move. It asks me down below to pick 2 points to move. So I'm just going to pick this top point. Zooming in really helps if you want to be accurate. And I'm just going to drag it over here like this. And it's now in place. I'm going to do Control Z, show you just a different way to select items. Let me just click out here to deselect. If I want to select this, but I don't want to go about the hassle of orbiting around, if I click on it once, it clicks that face. If I double click on it quickly, it selects the face and the edges. If I triple click on it quickly, it selects the whole item. Let's go ahead and finish up the base by, again, we'll just use the move tool. So I'll triple click on this, press the M key, pick where I want to grab it in the top, and move it over here like so. And then to complete it, I'll just go ahead and use the rectangle tool. Again, 3.5 by 1.5, so 3.5, comma 1.5, and it makes it. Now, I want to point out, if you get the numbers in backwards, so say I'd put in 1.5, comma 3.5. Oh, I forgot the decimal point, didn't I? That's no biggie. What my point is that until you click, you can keep just typing in numbers until you get what you want. So that looks right. So there's that. And now we'll use the push-pull tool, and we can pull it across and type in 36 inches, and it'll be perfect. But I want to show you a different way that you can do it, because I love being lazy. If I can do it an easier way, I will. So if I go ahead and start on it and click, where do I want it to end? Well, let's just zoom in here nice and close and see what happens. And when I get here, see how it goes a little bit past? It will just assume that that's 36 inches if they get close enough in touch. So there's the base of our doghouse. And at this particular point, things look like they're reasonable size. So I'm going to select the lady here. I'm going to delete her. I'm going to do a zoom extents. I am going to triple click on all of this. And now is a time where you really want to listen carefully, because SketchUp is really sticky. That is, if I want to take and move this edge here, see how it, how it can, just depends. And sometimes, we'll use that particular technique, but I'll hit the escape key to stop that. But what we want is we want these to be major pieces. And so I'm going to select all. Well, another thing you do to select all is you can come up and edit and select all, or Control A. And then I'm going to right click on this selected geometry and choose Make Component. And when I do that, it asks me to name it, and I'm just going to name it, let's name it the 2x4 base. And the other points we can just, or the other options we can just go ahead and ignore for now. Oh, I typed 2x5. You can rename it later on. You're not stuck with the name forever, because once you click Create, this is now one big piece of uneditable geometry. At least it can't be edited just by clicking on it. And up here in the components tray, you'll see that we've got our 2x4 base. Now that we have the base completed, let's go ahead and make a floor. We're going to make that out of 3/4 inch plywood. Not really sure what size to make it. I'd have to do a little bit of math in my head, but since this is just like real life, I'm just going to take and draw a rectangle from this end point down to this end point so it fits just perfectly. And then I'm going to extrude it by using the push-pull tool up a distance of, and this time instead of putting in 0.75 inches, I'm going to just type in 3/4 because SketchUp will accept fractional input just as well. So at this point, I'm going to take and triple click on it, right click, make it a component, call it the floor. And next we'll go ahead to move on to making the walls, but before we do that I want to talk about how you can edit components. You'll notice that I've got this one floor piece and it's all highlighted. That's three-dimensional product, and so down below same thing with our 2x4 base. If at any time you want to change the dimensions without erasing and starting all over again, just double click on it and that'll select it. You'll know it's selected because everything else will sort of be grayed out and you'll get this dotted line box that's surrounding it. And then once you have that done, you can just go ahead and use any of the tools to edit your component, and then when you click anywhere outside of the component, it will go back. So you can edit components. You just have to double click on them to open them up to make them available for editing. So let's see here, we'll just undo that. There we go, because we didn't want to make that change. So now let's go ahead and move on to the walls. Let's go ahead and get started by making the base of the walls that are going to support the roof and all of the wall framing. To do that, I'm going to do it just a little bit different. Again, just to show you or introduce you to some new skills. And so I'm just going to go ahead and make a 4-foot. So I'm going to make it 48 inches, 3.5 because I want it laying on its side. 90 degrees to where I intended, so instead I'm just going to retype in 3.5, 48. And now it's going that way, not that that's a big deal. We'll pull it up 1.5 inches. And now we're going to go ahead and put it in place using the Move tool. Now I need 4 of these to make the base. And so what I'm going to do is take and triple click on it to select it, all 6 faces along with the edges, and just use a copy and a paste. And you can see that I've now got a 2x4 stuck to my cursor. And I can't just go ahead and stick it in place, or maybe I can. It just depends upon where it grabbed it. It looks like it did grab it on the corner, but I want to be absolutely certain that it's correct. So I'm just going to put it out there floating in midair, type the M key to move it, and now I'm going to pick this endpoint and snap it right there. Okay? We'll do a zoom extent so we can get back and see everything again. I'm going to just do Control V because the 2x4 is still out there. And so I'm just going to click on it. You can see that it's selected. And so I'll move it down here. And now I want to take and go ahead and make 2x4s to go between the first 2 that I've laid, but they need to be shorter. So let's just go ahead and take this one and make it shorter to begin with. How short? It's hard to tell, but I'm just going to go ahead and make it that short to begin with. Triple click on it to select it, or not going to do that. I want to rotate it first. So let's go to our top view. It'll be a little bit easier to see here. Oops. There we go. Get the top view realigned. Okay, so to rotate this, I'm going to just go ahead and drag a selection box around it to grab all of the different faces. You can see here we can verify that it's all blue with dots and blue lines. And then to rotate it, I'll click on the rotate tool and this protractor shows up. and it wants to know, well, about what center, are you going to rotate it? So I'm just going to go ahead and select this endpoint here. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't even have to be on the 2x4. And I'm going to come out to the right, and then as I pull, after left clicking there, when it comes down, it will rotate. Notice also down in the measurement toolbox, we're now measuring angles rather than inches. So I can go ahead and see, I click here and go, oops, I don't want to start that over again. I can just type in 90 and it'll fix it for me. So let's just go ahead and move that into place. Let's go back into this view here. I'm going to triple click on it, and then I'm going to move it. Let's see, let's grab it right there on that endpoint. And then as we come across, we'll scroll around, and it's kind of hard to see, but it is telling us that it's at that, whoops, no it isn't. So let's pick a different point. Let's pick this top point, and then we'll come up to here like this. There we go. Now it's too short, but it's not a big deal, because at this point I can use the push-pull tool, grab that face, and just pull it across like this till it matches up with that edge, and it's now perfect. I'm going to do the same thing. Oops, I didn't. Oh, I can go Control V and paste another one, put it right there, use the push-pull tool, grab this face, and there we go. So there's the base of our doghouse. That is these parts right here. So let's go ahead and just triple click on those, and what are we going to do? We're going to make it a component. By the way, once they're selected, I'm just in the habit of right clicking. It's such a handy thing to do, and we can choose make component. Or I want to point out there's also an icon up here that we can click on that does the same thing, and we're going to call it base 2x4 for walls. And if we look up here under components tray, you can see we have those different things, and that's going to be handy later on, I think. So at this point, let's go ahead and add the vertical studs for the wall. We'll do that next. To make the wall studs, there's lots of ways we can do it, as usual. And I'm sure I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but I'm going to try to show you just a little different way to do it so that you can be exposed to as many different SketchUp tools as possible. So I'm going to begin by making a vertical 2x4. And come up here, and I'm just going to type in 1.5, 3.5, and then use the push-pull tool to extrude it 36 inches tall. Now I need a bunch of these, so I'm going to triple click on it and right click and make it a component, and I'm going to call it 36 inch wall stud vertical. Now that we have that, we can just take and pull in some pieces. So for example, I can come into my components here and go ahead and choose this one and pull one in. And I'm not exactly sure where I'm grabbing it from, so I'm just going to kind of park it floating out in midair, use the move tool, put it here, and put it in that corner. Now I could put another one, do the same thing by pulling out another 30-inch wall stud and stick it about there, but that's not what I want to show you. I mean, that works, but I want to show you something new is what I mean to say. And select it. I just need to click on it once, not 3 times, because it's already a component, and I'm going to move it. And one of the options that I have over here in the instructor, let's close up some of these trays, is right down here. It says that if I press the control key, it'll make a copy for me, and that's what I want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and focus on the cursor right now, this little moving guy. When I press the control key once, see how the little plus sign opened up? That means I'm going to be making a copy. So I'm going to grab this corner, and now as I drag across, I'm going to put it right there. But we're not done yet, there's another thing that we can do, and that is make equally spaced copies. So before I do anything else, if I type in 2 divided by, and the divided by symbol is on your number key, it's above the 8. On your regular keyboard is where the question mark is, and hit enter, it'll put 1 in the middle. But if I say, no, I'd like one more, so I'll just go ahead and type in 3 divided by, and when I hit enter, it gives me 4 studs, or 3 additional copies, all equally spaced apart. And that is a huge time saver, and it also adds to a great degree of accuracy for your model. Now, I'm probably about as lazy a guy as you'd ever want to meet, and if I could keep from doing something twice, I love it. So I'm going to now take and draw a box, and it matters that you draw it from right to left to select those studs. I'm going to click move. I'm going to zoom in here and grab this right here, but before I grab it, remember you have to press the control key if you want to copy it. So I press the control key once and I pull it across, and there's those studs, those vertical studs. Now I'm going to go to my top view because I need to do the studs across the front and the back, but this stud isn't oriented in the direction that I want it. I want it to be flat. Not that it makes a whole lot of difference, so I'm going to go ahead and rotate it. So I'm going to select this 36-inch stud by drawing a box around it, or you can triple click on it, both work. And I'm going to click the rotate tool. Now we've rotated before, and I think in the past I put it down in a corner, but it doesn't really matter. You just go ahead and click one place, then move out to the right or move out to the left. It doesn't really matter as long as you're on the red axis, and then we can move it up, and it will snap to 90 degrees and you'll get the green axis, or you can just type in 90, hit enter, and there you have it. So once I have that set, I can now take and move it. Let's see here, do a zoom extents to come all the way out. So in this particular case, I'm going to copy and paste it, and I'm going to come in and zoom in here and stick it there. It seems to want to snap to the corner, which is kind of nice. You got to be careful about that because it doesn't always work that way. So when I put in another one, I'd really like it to be on the other corner, so I'm just going to snap it there for now, and then re-grab it over here and put it in. Let's go around the other side, do the same thing, Control V to put another one in. It's on that corner, so I'll move up to here. Oh, but you see it's on the back, so I'm just going to hang it out here in space and re-grab it on that corner. I don't need to press any extra keys. SketchUp knows that I'm in the move mode. Kind of goofed up here, so I'm going to do zoom extents. And again, I'm going to go Control V to put in another stud. I'm going to have to hang it out in space, grab the other corner, and put that in. And then I'm just going to put in a couple more. Let's see. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hang it out there, and I'm going to copy it and paste it. And let's see, I really want it to be on the other corner, so I'm just going to put one about there and put one about there. Oh, that's too low. So we'll zoom in here, we'll grab it on that endpoint and move it about there. Now when we go to the back view here, if it's not exactly the way you want it, you can move them if you want to. But when it comes to the front, we're going to be cutting an opening for the door, so I want those studs to be just a little bit wider. So I'll go Control V and put in the stud about there, and then Control V again and pull one in over about there. So it's a little bit wider, but that's okay because that will allow us to frame for our door when we open it up later on. I don't need this anymore, so I'm going to delete it. I don't need this one anymore, I'm going to delete it. I think everything looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is go to a side view and then draw a selection box around all of these to grab them all. And as you spin, you can see that we got all the good stuff there. I'm going to make a component, and I'm going to call it my wall studs. And save it. Before we close out, we want to go ahead and put the studs across the top. It's the same pieces that we have down here for the base, and so rather than drawing that all over again, we're just going to go ahead and take the base for the 2x4 walls, pull it out into our model, and then we'll move it. I'll click on this corner right down here, put it right here on top, and now we're ready to move on to creating the rafters for the roof. Next we want to take and add some plywood to the sides. Plywood can be 1/2 inch thick, 3/4 thick. We'll go ahead and just use 3/4 since that's what we use for the floor. To do that, we can just use the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle from here. I want it to come down about here, maybe about 1 inch from the bottom. So let's learn a new tool that'll help us put it exactly 1 inch from the bottom. So I'll just hit escape. I'll come down here and we're going to take a look at the tape measure tool, which is a great little tool for measuring, say, the width of this opening. It'll tell us about 1 foot, 1 15/16 of an inch, approximately. Or we can come down here. We should be able to figure out that this is exactly 4 feet. A little info box pops up adjacent to the tape measure, and it also gives you the length down in the measurement bar. But we can use it for also creating guidelines. And so I'm just going to take and click on this edge, and I'm going to hold on to it. And as I start to move up, it makes a dotted line. So I'm going to just pull that up some, and then type in 1 inch down in the measurement toolbar, and when I hit enter, I've now got a line that's 1 inch off the ground. So now when I make my rectangle here, let's do it. There we go. I can be very precise and start here, and I can snap down in this corner here. You have to zoom in to get it. There we go, the intersection. And I can pull up to this corner, and it gives me a face that I can then take and pull out 0.75 inches. Okay, those lines don't represent it. You can come in and erase them if you want. I'm going to take this and triple click on it. I'm going to copy it, do a zoom extent. There we go. My mouse is a little finicky today. I'm going to paste it, and then when I move it, I'm going to move this point right up to there. And just that quickly, I have 2 of the sides done. And then let's go ahead and make the back from here down to here. And then use the push-pull tool to pull it out, 0.75. Oop, I guess it looks like I did not exactly get the right spot, did I? Not a big deal though, because I can click on this, and I wanted to show this to you anyways. See, I can pull out, but if I mouse over to this part right here, see where I am? That means that the dotted edge there that I'm pulling out is going to be coplanar, or even or flush, with that side of the doghouse. So let's go through and do the same thing again. There we go. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to quickly mouse over there and click, and now it's fixed. So let's go ahead and put that same size piece on the front. Oh, it's attached. Okay, so that's not a big deal. We'll just go around the front. We've already got everything pretty much the way we want it. So we'll just put in a rectangle here and come down to this edge, and then use the push-pull tool. Oh, the wrong thing was selected there. There we go. Pull it out. Oh, I see what happened before, 0.75. And then we'll just go ahead and pull that out so that it's flush, and do the same thing to the other side. Now you'll notice that whenever you take line segments and put them together, and have a closed or watertight surface, it goes ahead and closes geometry. So we don't want this right here. Let's see, and see how it's attached to all the other studs. So let's redefine that by just drawing a rectangle like that. And now we can select just that rectangle and delete it, and we're back inside. So those are our 4 sides. We'll cut the door a little bit later, but let's just go ahead and make the roof next. It's time to add the rafters, or the boards that go across the top of the doghouse, so that we have something to nail our plywood and roofing material to, and those boards are called rafters. And they're a little bit of complicated geometry. So the first thing that I'm going to do, select all of my geometry by drawing a rectangle around like so, top right to bottom left, and it looks like it got it all. But if I want to be sure, I'll just come up here and choose select all. Both do the same thing. And what I'm going to do is take and make it a component. And I'm just going to call it temp doghouse, because it's just temporary. And you can call it anything you want, doesn't really matter. But the reason that I've made it a component is because SketchUp has that stickiness, and I'm sure by now you know what I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and use some new tools to lay out our rafters. So I'm going to start with the protractor, select this endpoint, and then it wants to know the 2 rays of the angle. So I'm just going to select anywhere along this top horizontal edge. Then I'm going to pull up, and I could just click somewhere, but I need to know what it is. Down in my measurement box, it's telling me right now it's 45, but that's a little steep. I'm just going to put in 30 degrees and hit enter. Then do the same thing on this side. Come across horizontally, type in 30, and then now I'm going to use the tape measure tool to create parallel guidelines, because the 2x4s are 3.5 inches wide. And so we'll do the same thing here, 3.5. And now we can just use the line tool to draw our 2x4s. So I'm going to come down here along the reference line. I'll put in 36 inches. The exact distance isn't super important. Come up vertically and then close that face, and do the same thing on the right side. Come down 36, then come down vertically, click on the reference line, and come up here, and we now have 2 faces. So let's give them the thickness, which is 1.5 inches. We'll use our push-pull tool to pull out here 1.5, and then we'll do the same thing there. Whoops. Now, notice how it's hollow? And that's not a big deal. Somewhere when I was clicking around, I did something just a little bit goofy. It might have to do with these 2 edges here. So I'm just going to delete those. Nope, don't want to do that because that's part of the component. So what I'm going to do instead is just come in and heal it. It's not going to make a big difference one way or the other. There we go. I've got my 2 2x4s. I'll go to my front view, do a zoom extents, and now double click on those. There we go. And look around to make sure I've got all of the geometry. There we go. And I'm pretty sure I do. At this point, I'll just select the select tool, right click, make it a component, and we'll call it a rafter pair. And we know we did it right because we have this bounding box around it that signifies that it's a component. So now that I have my rafter pair component set up, I can just go ahead and pull in additional rafter pairs, like so. But knowing exactly where to put them is going to be a little bit of a challenge. So the tactic that I'm going to take instead, and by the way, that would work, it's just going to require a lot of extra layout geometry, is that I'm going to select this rafter pair or this component. I'm going to choose to move it. And then I'm going to come in and zoom in to this point right here, this intersection. Make sure you hold down the control key because that's going to make a copy. And then as I pull, I want to pull along the green axis till I get to this corner right there. And I'm going to do a zoom extents. And then remember that trick, I can go ahead and type in 2 divided by, and it'll make 2 copies, the one that I just moved to the end and the one in the middle. I can type in 8 divided by, but that's just way too many. So let's try 3 divided by and see what that looks like. And that looks pretty reasonable. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and stick with so that I have my rafters. They're all equally spaced. They're all sitting on top of the doghouse. So the last thing I want to do is go ahead and select this component that was the base. And I want to undo one level. I don't want the whole base to be a component. So I'm just going to come in and explode it. And all that does is just take me back one step so that now I have my vertical studs, I have my floor, I have my 2x4 base, etc. So right back where we begin with, but we don't have any of that stickiness that is so irritating. So to go ahead and make our plywood roof, I'm going to take and use the rectangle tool once again. And I'm going to start down here at the bottom corner, and as I go across, notice how it's snapping in the red, green, and blue axes plane. And that's because SketchUp is not exactly sure what to do about it, but I'm just going to come up to this right along here so that I've got what I need. I'm just going to put it there. I'm not done yet. Use the push-pull tool to pull it up 0.75 inches, the thickness of our plywood. And then I'm going to come into here and pull this out. There we go. So it's flush. Pull this edge up so it's flush with. There we go. Let's see. Zoom in here. There we go. And let's see. We have to go around and do the back side as well. And now let's go ahead and just make the other side. So we'll zoom out just a little and use the rectangle tool to come down and get just close enough. There we go. Push-pull tool to pull up 0.75, and then let's pull this edge down. Again, zoom in, that really helps. And let's see, where else do we need to extend it here? There we go. And I think we have our 2 pieces done. Now you'll note that they meet at just a little bit of a funny corner up here, or in a funny angle rather, up here at the top. So you can fix that by doing a couple of different things. You can extend this face up, make it flush, but what I like to do instead is just take and look at the front view, come into here and just go ahead and draw a line across here, and I want it, and then I'll just hit escape, draw another one across like that, and then down like so. Clean it up with the eraser tool. And it should be a closed face, but it's not. Oh, I see why. There's just a little bit of a gap there. I didn't use the push-pull tool quite as much as I could have. So let's just fix that. So I'm going to pull this up so that it's even with that end point. And I'm showing you these mistakes just because everybody makes them, and it's great to be able to see that you don't have to start all over again. So now to make this a surface, I'm just going to trace it once again. There we go. Just took one line just to make it watertight. And then I'm thinking you know where I'm going next. There we go. So I'm going to take and use my push-pull tool to extrude that little face there all the way across so it's flush with that. And then if you want, you can come in and erase. Oh, you can't erase that line. Yeah, that one's not playing. We're going to have to take and redraw that. Let's try that. There we go. So that should complete it. There we go. And we can do the same thing here. Let's go ahead and try to erase it. Yep, see, it opens it up. So let's just go ahead and heal that surface by using the rectangle tool from that corner up to that corner. And now SketchUp recognizes it as a complete surface, and we can fix it like so. Before we continue, I need to correct just a couple of mistakes, and they're probably subtle, and if you've been following along you might have the same mistakes. But when I fill in this hole here across the top, you know, between the rafters and the front of the doghouse, I don't have anything to nail to. So I need to take this rafter pair and move it back 3/4 of an inch. So to do that, I'm going to use the move tool. Just press M. I can click anywhere I want, doesn't really matter, as long as I move back along the green axis. And if I type in 0.75, it moves it back for me. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side here. Again, I'm going to select the rafter set. I'm going to press the M key to move. I'm going to click anywhere. I'm going to pull it in along the green axis, 0.75 inches, and hit enter. And I've now got room to do my nailing. So I'll go to the front, and I'll click outside here just anywhere. And so now to create this, I need to be just a little bit careful. Let's go ahead and start by drawing a line along this face. And if I click to that edge, I'm going to be in the front, aren't I? So I need to tip it up, need to come up parallel with the blue axis, and I need to grab it right there along that edge. That's really important. And so now I'm going to pan along here and click right there. And now this is a little bit difficult because I want it to be right above that intersection right there. So I'm going to come down, mouse over it, pause for a second, and then if I drag up carefully, see that dotted inference line? That means I'm right there. I'm going to click there, and then I'm going to click here, and finally I just need to close it. And so I come back into my original point right there. And when I click on it, I get my face, don't I? So let's do a zoom extent so we can see what we've got. And so let's now use the push-pull tool to pull out. And now we have our piece of plywood in there. We'll just go through and do the other side just as quickly. Actually, I won't do it. It's the exact same process. I'll leave it up to you to do. I'll pause the video, and then when you come back, we'll work on putting in the door. So now we have the top of Fido's doghouse sealed in from the weather. So what we want to do now is put in the door, or cut an opening in this front piece of plywood. So let's just go ahead and look at the front view and zoom in. And to begin with, I can't really tell exactly where to draw. Now I can come up into view and go into face style and choose X-ray, which kind of gives me a 3D view so that I can draw and snap to different points. But I'm just going to show you an easier way to figure it out, because by now all of our models might look just a little bit different. So I'm going to turn X-ray off, and I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way. So I'm just going to start with just a small hole of any particular size. Oh, would I get an extra one in there? There we go. And now I'm going to take and use the push-pull tool to push back 0.75 inches. And it doesn't cut a hole for me, but if I now take and click on this face and delete it, I've now got a hole through there along with these faces that are on the inside, and those are important. So now what I'm going to do is take and just expand the hole using the push-pull tool. So for example, I'm going to just push on that, and I'm going to push, and see there's that rafter. Just going to come until I'm on that edge. I'm going to come around this side. Let's see, I need to select that face first. There we go. And then use the push-pull tool to pull it back until, now let's see, we'll do it to there, and then I'm going to grab a point on the front there and pull it to this edge, so now it's perfect. I'm going to grab the back edge of this. Again, I need to select the face first, then use the push-pull tool, grab a back reference point, and there's the bottom of the sill. And now how tall to make it? Well, that's pretty much up to you. When we look at the front here and do zoom extents, you can see we can come up some. Let's go ahead and just draw a reference line up about this high. And then let's zoom in here. Use the push-pull tool. Oh, excuse me, I keep forgetting to grab the, there we go. Grab the face first, then use the push-pull tool. I'll grab a point that's on the outside so I can pull it right up to this line. And now we have, oh, I'm inside, aren't I? Let's see here. Let's do a zoom extents. Boy, we're really goofed up. There we go. And we have a nice square opening. But I want something a little bit different, so let's learn a new tool. We'll go back to our front view here, and we're going to use an arc tool. Now we've got several different arc tools that we can choose from, and in future lessons we'll go ahead and explain in more detail how they are different from each other. But I'm just going to use a 2-point arc with a bulge, and I'm going to say I want my arc to start here, and then I want my end point of the arc, so I'll start it here, and then as I pull up I get my bulge, and when I get to about half a circle it'll snap. There we go. See where it says half circle? So if I just go ahead and click on it, it'll say half circle. Now if arcs weird you out, you can always just take and also make a circle and come in here to the midpoint, come out to this point, and it fills in some geometry for you, but it gets essentially the same thing done. So I'll delete that, and then I'm going to delete that edge. Nope, I don't want to delete that edge yet, but I do want to delete this front surface that got filled in. And now to cut this opening through the plywood, I'm going to do the same thing. Push-pull tool, I'm going to come back 0.75 inches, and then take and delete that surface, and we now have an opening for our doghouse. At this point your doghouse is basically done, and you can feel very proud of what you've accomplished so far. This is a tough lesson, especially for a beginner, but hopefully I've been able to guide you through some of the many different tools that you can use, and if you haven't been able to do it my way, you've been able to figure out how to do it another. I do want to introduce you to a couple more tools that are available in SketchUp, and we'll use those to embellish our doghouse. First one, I think we'll go ahead and use the text tool. And this is three-dimensional text. It's not flat. It's one of the few things that SketchUp draws right from the get-go that's three-dimensional. It's not flat, it's not 2D, it's not a face. It's actually already extruded for you. Since it's editable, I'm not going to worry about too much. I'm just going to go ahead and type in Fido, and I'm going to click on Place. Oh, I hit Enter, but you have to actually click on the Place button. And here comes in the name Fido, and I'm not exactly sure where I want to put it. I'm just going to stick it there right now. I'm going to go to my front view and now use the Move tool to get it centered up. So I will just pick a point somewhere, and it's kind of big, isn't it? So let's introduce you to yet another new tool, and it's called Scale. And with the Scale tool, I can take anything selected and make it bigger or smaller. So here's the icon right here for the Scale tool, and you'll see that when we do that, we get all these different grips. So if I grab a grip here, I can scale it out this way. I can go from corner to corner and move it like so, and you'll notice that what's happening down in the measurement box is a scale factor. So if I want to make it twice as big, I can just type in a 2 and hit enter, and everything will grow in all three dimensions by a factor of 2. But I'm just eyeballing this, so I'm going to move it to about there. I think that'll be good. If I don't like it, I can always rescale it later. I'll go to the front here, do Zoom Extents, and now I will use the Move tool to just click and put Fido. Let's see, we'll just kind of try to get it centered up there over the front. We've now got Fido attached to the front. You can think of them as wood letters, whatever, but let's go ahead and move on to the next thing that I want to show you, and that is the Paint Bucket tool. Now, the Paint Bucket tool is where you can take and color in colors and different materials. And notice when I clicked on it, over here, the materials tray opened up. So I can, for example, come in and choose colors, and you have all these different colors you can choose from. You can create your own custom colors as well. But I'm just going to go with this dark brown here, color CO8, and I'm going to now come in and start to paint the outside of the doghouse. Got to get the edges. Might have to zoom in to get some of these edges. This is always something that students enjoy doing. And there's some shortcuts to painting, but nobody ever seems to mind doing it because it's kind of it satisfies the senses. And just adds a lot of quality to your product. So I made the outside brown. Let's take and now if we change colors, we can come in here and make the Fido part red. If you want to use the material instead, we'll go back and, for example, we can pick roofing, double click on that, and there's some different roofing patterns. So I'll choose the roofing shingles and put them on the top of the roof like so. And you can just kind of go along and continue to color or add materials to your doghouse, just however you'd want to go ahead and do it. If I want to go ahead and come in and choose some different colors, let's say, well, I'll just go back into the colors. Let's pick something really dark that's complementary. Let's see, I want a nice dark brown. There we go. That's a little, oh, that's the same one that I just used. So let's just use like a little bit of orange, and you can come in and color those edges whatever you want. You know, at this particular point, you can just go ahead and make this model your own. This isn't a really difficult thing to do, but it really does help to bring a lot of life to this previously gray 3D model that you've created. We'll do one more thing before we finish to introduce you to a couple of different new tools, and then we'll be done. The last couple of things we're going to do is to make a food bowl and a water bowl. And these will help to introduce you into scaling and the Follow Me tool. The doghouse that we have right now, we can just sort of slip aside so that we have a place to work. And I'm just going to go ahead and make a circle. I'm not going to worry about how big it is. This is going to be the water bowl. I can always scale it later. Just going to make a circle, and then I'm going to extrude it up some. And now I want to extrude down to cut away. So I need to make a concentric circle. And if I come and march around in the middle here to snap to the center, I don't get it. But if I come over to the edge and just mouse over it just for a moment, now when I come back into the center, it gives me the actual physical center. And I can come out and do this, and then take and extrude just a little bit more. That is using the push-pull tool like this. And now that we have that done, we have a basic cylinder drawn with a surface that we can make water, but let's just go ahead and give it a little bit of taper. And to do that, I'm going to select this inside face and this top face, and now I'm going to select the scale tool. When I do that, I get this bounding box with all these different bright green grips, and what I want to do is scale it about the centers. So down in the status bar, it tells me that if I hold down the control key, that I can now scale it about the center, and I can give it some taper like so. So it looks just a little bit nicer, doesn't look quite so clunky. Finally, when I come into the paint bucket tool, which is right up here, there we go, I'm going to go ahead and let's see, first thing I want to do is deselect everything, and now I'll go into the paint bucket tool, and I'm going to grab this water right here. Oh, that's not right. There we go. And that gives us a translucent water. You see, we can see the bottom edge, and then we can just go ahead and come in and go back and select a color. I think Fido would love to have a yellow water bowl, so we'll paint that yellow there, and the bottom yellow, and Fido's water bowl is done. And that's using just the push-pull tool, circle tool, using some materials. We can do a zoom extents, of course, and move it closer to the door if we want to. But the water bowl is basically done. I'm going to use a completely different tactic to make the food bowl. I'm just going to come into a front view here. And I'm just referencing the approximate size of the water bowl. And let's see, I think I'm going to start with the line tool. And we'll just click and come about halfway across. And then we'll come up about the same. We'll make it a little bit taller. So I guess basically at this point what I just have is a rectangle. To give it some taper, I'm going to draw a line up here like so. And then I'm going to use the circle tool to create an arc about there. And then use the eraser to get what will become my profile. That is, if you were to saw the food bowl in half, you would basically get this shape. So you can make this profile just about any shape you want. Now we're going to draw a path for it, and we want it to be flat. So we're just going to go across the base like so. And then I don't need this geometry inside the circle, so I'm going to delete it. And now for a new tool. This is called the Follow Me tool. And I'm going to go ahead and select it. And it asks me to select a face to extrude. So I'll select this one. And then it asks me to drag it along a path. And see, as I'm going around the circle there, how it is revolving or creating a three-dimensional shape. Now it's all black right now, but when it gets to the end point and I click, there's my bowl. So you can go ahead and edit your profile or draw your profile just about any shape you want, but the key is that the path or the circle, that the geometry on the inside be deleted like we did, and that the center of your food bowl be the center of the path or the circle, and that the circle come out to the farthest point on your food bowl. So we'll go ahead and redo that so that we have our bowl. And I guess we should go ahead and paint it here. So we'll go ahead and pick a different material. In this case, I'm just going to stick with colors again, and that one's yellow, so let's go ahead and choose green. Remember to zoom in, and then don't forget the bottom. There we go. And so we can now take and move those or get those positioned wherever we want. I'll just grab them both. Use the move tool, click anywhere, and just kind of get them there in front of the doghouse. So there's our doghouse. It's been quite a project. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope yours turned out just a little bit better than mine. Remember, there are always many, many ways that you can get to the same place. So there's never really a purely right way, as you saw when I made the food bowl and the water bowl. Just use your tools, learn to edit, learn to lay out geometry, make components, be careful, and you'll end up with something that you can really be proud of. Until next time, this is Mr. Westland on Tech with Mr. Westland.